Nikki Giovanni was born on June 7, 1943 in Knoxville, Tennessee. However, she was raised in the Lincoln Heights neighborhood of Cincinnati, Ohio. She was born into a working-class family. Her father, Gus Jones Giovanni, was a probation officer, and her mother, Yolande Cornelia Giovanni, was a social worker. Growing up, her parents always emphasized the value of education and hard work. She has said that these work ethics helped her become successful in college, as she graduated with honors from Fisk University with a Bachelor in Arts degree in 1967. In addition to attending Fisk University, she attended the University of Pennsylvania's School of Social Work for 1 semester, as well as Columbia University, but received no degree from either in late 1967. This was a crucial time in her development as a writer. Nikki Giovanni has enjoyed a remarkably successful career as a poet and educator. She describes the key to her success by saying, "If I were advising someone on a writing career, the deal is this: write. If you get published, good. If somebody pays you, better, because you have to eat. But the deal is you have to write." Nikki Giovanni was born in 1943, which means she was in her 20s during the height of the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. Her age is important in understanding the context of Giovanni's work and scholarship during and after the Civil Rights Movement. Many scholars argue that the social experiences and challenges that present in early adulthood may foster lifelong social connections and overall perspectives on the world. Dr. Cohen Locks and others say that longitudinal studies have shown that early adult social life is related to later social and psychological outcomes. Nikki Giovanni was 20 when Medgar Evers was killed, 22 when Malcolm X was murdered, 24 when Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated, and 26 when Fred Hampton was killed. This context is important when analyzing the author's background in relationship to this period, while she published some of her most famous writing. Her works during this time, specifically about the Black experience in America, comes with a real-world take on what her circumstances were. Nikki Giovanni's poetry combines fierce conviction, tender humor, and an unwavering devotion by telling her truth as a Black person who matured throughout the Black Power and also Civil Rights movement. As scholar Virginia C. Fowler writes, she is a definitive poet of the people, employing seemingly simple language to explore complex issues of race, gender, love, and politics. I wanted to specifically highlight 3 of her poems written during the Civil Rights Movement and analyze her words up close, starting with the poem Nikki Rosa, published in 1968.
Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black. You always remember things like living in Woodlawn with no indoor toilet. And if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself, and how good the water felt when you got your bath from one of those big tubs that folk in Chicago barbecue in. And somehow, when you talk about home, it never gets across how much you understood their feelings, as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale. And even though you remember, your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock and another dream goes. And though you're poor, it isn't poverty that concerns you. And though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that makes any difference, but only that everybody is together, and you and your sister have happy birthdays and very good Christmases. And I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand Black love is Black wealth, and they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy.
This poem at its core is an intimate look into Giovanni's childhood and holistically the childhood of all Black children in America. Her use of language in this poem is by no mistake. Written in an accessible dialect, this poem embraces emotional complexity in the Black family structure. In this poem, it's important to understand that this is a Black narrator addressing a Black audience, in some ways to find solidarity, but also to prove these experiences would be foreign to white people of any status. The literary work juxtaposes the events of the narrator's youth with future biographers' misunderstanding or misrepresentation. Nevertheless, the negative recollections caused by poorness are outweighed by positive memories provided by a powerful, tight family. Unfortunately, they, being the critics or biographers, will write the lack of an inside toilet, but will in turn fail to mention the warm baths given in one of those big bathtubs that folk in Chicago barbecue in. They will never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself. The narrator fears that the simple pleasures of her childhood will be overlooked. The biographers will notice the poverty but not the richness of a strong family. They won't understand that black love is black wealth. Because of this blindness, the narrator hopes that no white person ever has cause to write about me. The white critics would note the hardships but miss the love. They'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was happy. All in all, Nikki Rosa is one of Nikki Giovanni's staple works because of its candid perspective on growing up black in America. She so beautifully acknowledges what they won't, that our story doesn't have to be sad. The next poem I'm going to discuss is Reflections on April 4th, 1968, published 1968, written right after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. This poem is so powerful because by titling it Reflections with a date instead of just naming King's death, Giovanni anticipates how April 4th, 1968 will become synonymous with the world's historical loss. She knew we'd remember this day forever, but she additionally implies a larger perspective of what happened that day, one that's less regarding King's death, but about how Black Americans responded to it. They were already rioting in cities across the country by the time Giovanni sat down to write and reflect. Instead of memorializing King's leadership like everyone else did, she speaks to the individuals he was leading and asks what they could do in his absence to overturn or fulfill his gift. During a time when people were writing eulogies, Giovanni was crafting a war cry. She knew that she had to be extreme because in her mind, peace is what got King killed. The first lines of the poem read, "What can I, a poor black woman, do to destroy America?" Giovanni said that the question was a collective one that was being asked in every black heart. And it wasn't at all rhetorical. She said, "There is one answer, I can kill." King's assassination was an act of war, Giovanni submersed, that would last, spark black rebellion. May the warriors in the streets go forth into the stores for guns and TVs for whatever makes them happy, for only a happy people make successful revolution, and this day begin the Black Revolution, she wrote. Giovanni was 24 when she wrote this poem. The third and final poem by Nikki Giovanni being analyzed is titled My Poem, published in 1968. I am 25 years old, black female poet, asking, "Nigger, can you kill? If they kill me, it won't stop the revolution. I have been robbed. It looked like they knew that I was to be hit. They took my TV, my 2 rings, my piece of African print, and my 2 guns. If they took my life, it won't stop the revolution. My phone is tapped, my mail is open. They've caused me to turn on all my friends and all my new lovers. If I hate all black people and all Negroes, it won't stop the revolution. I'm afraid to tell my roommate where I'm going and scared to tell people if I'm coming. If I sit here for the rest of my life, it won't stop the revolution. If I never write another poem or short story, if I flunk out of grad school, if my car is reclaimed and my record player won't play, and if I never see a peaceful day or a meaningful black thing, it won't stop the revolution." Nikki Giovanni has taken a clear position in this poem as the warmonger regardless of what white people do to her. Her audience is the white people who are against the civil rights movement and equality for black Americans. Her revolutionary mindset is indifferent from most young black adults at the time. Each stanza is an example of how hurdles put in place by white people or the institution on how they try to get in the way of change. However, she purposefully ends each stanza the same way by saying, "It won't stop the revolution," making it clear that there is nothing they could do to end our fight for equality. As you can see by the reading and analysis of these 3 Nikki Giovanni poems, the 1960s was a powerful, impressionable time to be a black woman in America. Giovanni so beautifully represents an entire era of cultural, artistic explosion, because during a decade when so many of the nation's positive influencers were being murdered, she became the voice of the opposition. Her words are a mere articulation of what every 20-something black American was feeling at this time. And even after the civil rights movement, Nikki Giovanni's writing, whether it be about race, politics, or life, her perspective always has remnants of rebellion and fight, which she acquired from the civil rights movement. Nikki Giovanni's strong language and rebellious stand against white oppression made her an influential voice in the 1960s. It is her fresh contemporary writing style that has contributed to her success with many generations. Nikki Giovanni still provides a strong militant perspective in her more recent writing, and that is why she is deemed as Poet of the Black Revolution.